In July 2018, I met my boyfriend on a dating app. We talked every night for hours, and he seemed perfect. We finally decided to meet up for a weekend in September, but he ended up staying for a week. In hindsight, I probably should have realized that something wasn't right. That Friday, I drove to Atlanta for my brother and sister-in-law's baby shower and had to make a stop in Charlotte to pick up my sister. While I was only 30 minutes away from home, not even to Richmond, he called me and said he wanted to kill himself because I left him. I made it to my sister and showed her the text messages and let her hear the voice messages that he left me. By the time we got to my mom's house, he had broken my laptop and sent me pictures of it smashed and was threatening to break other things in my house. I was so worried and scared about the condition of my house when I returned. That Sunday, on my drive back, he was silent. My sister asked me if I wanted her to go home with me, but I turned down help, not knowing that I needed it the most because I had no idea what I was getting myself into. When I arrived home, he greeted me with open arms. He apologized for his actions. He cried. He told me how much he loved me and how he felt like a part of him had died when I left him. And he manipulated me into believing that he deeply loved me and that this infatuation was really love. But now I know that it's not. Everything was great for about 3 weeks until I had to go back to Atlanta for my best friend's wedding. He convinced me to leave my dog with him for the weekend and promised that he wasn't going to act like he did before. So on the night of the wedding, I missed his call and all hell broke loose. He left my front door open all night so that my dog would run loose. The next morning, he texted me saying that my dog was gone. My friend prayed with me that someone would find my dog and keep him safe until I returned. I called the King George Animal Shelter to report what happened. Less than 20 minutes later, I got a call back that someone had found my dog, but I didn't tell him that my dog was safe because I was afraid of what he might do if he knew. At the time, I didn't realize that that was a form of abuse, but I knew it didn't feel right. Eventually, things calmed down and we were in sync. I didn't know we were only in sync because I was isolated. I could only talk to my family and friends when I was away from the house. When I was at home, he had my undivided attention. On a Saturday in December, a friend had a Christmas party and he was excited to go with me. But once we got there, he didn't want to get out the car. He was angry and we sat in the car for like 2 hours. I eventually convinced him to go inside. And once we got inside, my friends asked me, "Is everything okay?" But once again, I turned down help because I thought everything was fine. When he was ready to go, we left. And when we got home, I learned just how not fine everything was. He was upstairs packing his stuff and saying he wanted to leave. And I said, okay, because I wasn't going to beg him to stay. He thought I was being smart with him, and so he started trying to strangle me. Once I got to the bottom of the stairs, I managed to get away, and I was under the impression that the beer that he had been drinking was the reason he acted this way, so I smashed all the bottles. To me, this situation reminded me of my alcoholic uncle back home, so I was like, it had to be the beer. The next day, he picked another argument and was fuming the entire night. I tried to go to sleep since I had to work the next morning, but he had the television blasting music, so I turned it off. He started kicking me and trying to push me out of my own bed. So I pushed him back, and he fell off. He jumped on top of me and started trying to strangle me. I was trying to get away, and he punched me in the back of the head. I managed to get out the room, and he chased me into the spare bedroom, and we started fighting. I had never fought so hard in my entire life. I remember shouting and praying to God, like, "Lord Jesus, please don't let me die like this. Please, Lord." And he stopped hitting me and said, "I'm not trying to kill you." Of course, he started crying and telling me how much he loved me again. And I walked out the room trying to go back to bed, but then he tried to push me down the stairs. But I fell on the ground instead, and he started strangling me again, and I bit his arm until he let me go. I tried to run out the house, but he blocked me. My lip was busted, and he had me to put a bag of frozen peas on it so that the swelling would go down by the time I had to go to work in the morning. When I left for work, I took my dog to a boarding facility because I couldn't risk it. When I came home, he apologized for his actions and expressed his love for me, manipulated me once again. Everything was fine for a while. I was even able to go home to Atlanta for Christmas with no issues. In January, I was planning to have dinner with friends, but he started an argument and physically assaulted me again. I noticed his temper was getting shorter and shorter. I learned to avoid being hit by just doing what he said and avoiding my family and my friends. One day in February, I picked him up from the train station, and he was upset the entire ride. Once we got to Fredericksburg, he wanted to go to the Ferry Farm Sheets so that I could get him a drink and a cigarillo. When I went inside, I acted normal, and I got everything he asked for. I asked the cashier if they would call the police. I could feel things escalating. By this time, I knew what was going to happen. The cashier brought out the manager, but he came inside the store, so I had to go. When I got in the car, he started yelling, "Drive the effing car, B." He poured the drink in my lap, and so I stopped the car and asked, "Why did you do that?" And he yelled at me again to drive the car, but I wouldn't. So he punched me in the eye, and I ran back into the store and told the manager, who was on the phone with the Stafford County Sheriff's Department, what happened. Next thing I know, he drove off in my car with my dog. I had to get a ride home from the officers. I was told not to answer his calls, but I did answer eventually. He apologized, as usual, and promised that he would stop drinking and that we wouldn't have issues anymore. So I paid his bill, and he came back. I know you're wondering, why did I answer his calls when I was told not to? And why did I pay his bill? Because I loved him, and I missed him, and he promised me that he would be different. And I had hope in us, so I believed him. And he stopped drinking for a while, but not long. One day, when I was at work, he wanted to go to D.C., but I refused to pay for him an Uber, so he smashed my TVs and my laptop and sent me pictures. And I was worried about my dog, so I rushed home to check on my dog. And he had a suitcase packed and ready to go and shouted for me to send an Uber again. So this time I did, and he left. And when I got home from work, he called and left voice messages saying that he was going to F me up just like he did my house. So I took my dog and checked into a hotel. I called the King George Sheriff's Office, and they arrested him. This time I didn't pay his bail, but his mom did, and he came back to my house. About a month later, everything was fine. He was even helping around the house. He started going to church with me. He mentioned getting married and starting a family, and we were happy until a warm, sunny day in April, and he went to D.C. and was very upset when he came home. I tried to ignore him. I was on the phone with a friend, and next thing I know, he came running into my room, screaming, "Keep my name out your mouth." But we weren't even talking about him, and so I kept telling him, "We're not talking about you." Eventually, he punched me in my eye so hard that my phone flew across the room. He started pacing back and forth, saying that I wasn't listening to him and that I was talking about him with my punk friends. He turned on the light, and he saw how swollen my eye was. And he said, "I didn't mean to hit you that hard, but you weren't listening to me." And he kept apologizing. At this point, I was silently praying that my friend would send the police to my house. My friend kept calling, and he kept wanting me to answer so that no one would think that anything was wrong. But I didn't. I was crying. But the King George Sheriff's Office sent me a call, and I answered it. He didn't know who they were, but I knew who it was on the other end. And so dispatch said that they would send someone to my house. And at first, I was going to lie for him and say that he wasn't there anymore until I talked to Officer Parker, and she talked some sense into me. She said, "Look at your face. That isn't love. Look at all you've accomplished. You are amazing, and you don't need a man like that bringing you down." She helped me to remember who I was. I'm a strong, independent woman with degrees that has a good job with the government, and I own my own house. From there, I told her where he was hiding, and I was introduced to Empowerhouse. I finally had someone to talk to about what happened. I learned how each of the incidents fit into the power and control wheel. I no longer felt ashamed to talk about what happened to me. Empowerhouse provided me with a strong support system, even outside of court, and helped me to be able to open up to my family and friends about what happened.
I'm a Stafford County resident, grew up in Stafford when there was just 2 high schools. So I'm here to share a story of how I'm also a victim of domestic violence by losing my mother. So my mother was a special woman. My father passed away in 2005 of a heart attack. And I didn't realize till afterwards, there's so many things you learn after the fact, that my mother really never got over that loss of my father. And I don't know how she got tied to this guy she started going out with. He would come around and, we're cordial. And, sometimes it's hard to get, when we all love our dad, we're trying to make sure mom is happy. My mom lived in Widewater and had lived there for over 20 years, before my dad had passed. And the first sign of domestic violence, I'm the type of person who probably talked to my mother every day, but I didn't physically see her every day, but we would talk. And my brother, his wife dropped him off at the house in Widewater because his wife wanted to go to dinner with friends, and my brother didn't want to hang with them. So he said, just drop me off at mom's. And my mom had the house that once we got in through the garage door code, we could just walk into her house. She didn't lock the door to the garage. So my brother was in there sitting in one of the gaming chairs, but he was watching TV. And he said, my mother came running in, and it was later on that evening, and it happened so quick, she was hovering. She ran in the kitchen and started hovering, and the guy came behind her, and my brother stood up like, what's going on? And he tried to say, wait, and my mother's name was Janice Washington. He said, wait, Janice, what is wrong? Why are you doing this? He tried to place like, what is my mom doing wrong? And my brother actually didn't ask any questions, and probably, I had to give him a little bit of kudos, but he kind of took the law into his own hands and, put a little bit of damage on the guy, where my brother was the one arrested because it was assault. My brother, the guy never put his hands on my brother. My brother just automatically started defending my mother. The guy he was hospitalized. He put this story that my mother had assaulted him and my brother had assaulted him. They ganged up on him. So we're in, Stafford County courts, and my brother's tried to defend. We got attorneys involved. And I don't know why after all of this, my mother went back to this guy. The charges were dropped. My mom went back to the guy. And, fast forward to May 23rd of 2018. I get a call. It's my closing date. I built a house in Stafford, and I have to do my walkthrough. And I get a call from my son. So my twins live with my mother, and my mom's house was over 3,500 square feet. She actually encouraged my kids, which I know why now. She encouraged both of my boys to move in with her because they were her protectors. When they were around, he never got smart with my mother. Nothing ever happened. But he always tried to get my mom to get rid of her grandkids. But my mom was like, they actually helped me. They're paying rent here. And my son called me because he Ubered home. He's in the medical field, the nursing field. And after work one day, he went out downtown Fredericksburg and Ubered home versus drove his car home. So the guy did not know that my son was home. And my son woke up to my mom being hit. So my son remembers what happened to my brother. So he just decided to get up and push the guy off of him, like, get off my grandma. And my son called me crying. And I'm like, okay. My brother said, I want to take care of it, Tanya. I said, you can't go back down there. And my brother's like, no, I have a family. I'm not going to do it again. I'm just going to give him an ultimatum. So honestly, that was the last day I had seen him. My brother came down there, and he gave him an ultimatum by a certain time. He had to be out of the house. And my brother came back with his friends. We called Stafford County, who told the guy he had to leave. But we didn't talk about the violence piece. And that's where, one of my lessons learned is you got to scream the violence piece. Stafford County told the guy, you got to go. And that's the last I seen him, May 23rd of 2018. Fast forward to 2019, and I'm a member of management at Geico. I'm upper management, so everyone knows me in that building. And I'm talking to my best friend who's here with me. We would walk during lunch, and I'm like, I got to get my mom out of this situation. Because what happened was my mother would secretly go see him. She would lie to her kids and say, I'm going here, I'm going with this girlfriend, I'm going here. And you're just kind of like, okay. Later to find out those were all lies. And my mom, it was April 14th of 2019. My mother, I get a call. My mom's in the hospital. She's being taken by ambulance to a hospital in Baltimore. And I'm like, why is she in Baltimore? Because she was supposed to be meeting her friend at MGM, but she met up with this guy. She claims she was separating, saying, I can't see you anymore. You gotta leave me alone. And he tried to kill her that day. She actually jumped out the car on the BW Parkway. She had broken ribs, 2 black eyes. She looked horrible. And I remember sitting on the couch because we're trying to get an exit strategy for my mother. We got to get you out of this situation. I actually hired a bounty. I had no faith in Baltimore police. That was just my own. I was like, we got to, we got to figure out a way to get you out of here because I don't know if they're going to get a hold of this guy, but he's trying to kill you. So my mom ended up, she was, whatever we were going to do to help get her out of the situation. So she ended up, every night, we had kind of like around-the-clock surveillance with my mom. That weekend, she's going to move in with me. We're going to get you out of this situation. Fast forward to that Thursday. We're all playing phone tag, checking in with my mom. I realized her cell phone was always full. You couldn't leave a message, but she always called you right back. Now I know why. She didn't want this guy leaving her messages. So fast forward to that Thursday. I called my mom that morning before my meeting. She didn't answer, okay? Nothing really weird about that because she would call me right back. She never called me back. I waited a little while, called her again, didn't answer. My brother ended up calling me and saying, you talked to mom today? I said, no, I haven't talked to her. He was like, I tried to call her too. I said, I'm going to drive up there and check on her. He was like, do you need me to go? I was like, no, I got it. I'm going to be good. I had talked to my boss already saying, I got to get I was 100% open with my boss. I got to get my mom out of the situation. It might have to do with me missing a little bit of time. I talked to my best friend every day at lunch. Like I wasn't ready to adult and take care of my mom yet, but I knew I was going to have to take care of my mom, not from being sick. That's when I thought I was going to have to take care of my mother. So we ended up, I drove up to her house and her car was there. So I was scared because my mother had to go into work that day, but she was going to be the only one in the office. And there was only like 4 in the office because it was spring break. So I really thought my mom had a heart attack or stroke when I pulled up to the house. So I went in, put in the garage door code, walked into the house, and it was that eerie quiet. It was super quiet. And, I checked her porch. I went upstairs. By this time on the way to my mom's, I actually called my boys because they lived with my mom doing a check-in. Did you see your grandma? My son was like, yeah, I talked to her at 6:30. I was getting ready to leave for work. She was downstairs making coffee, getting ready to go to work herself. I said, okay. I called my other son. You talked to mom today? He was like, no. You talked to your grandma? He said, no, I didn't. But the weirdest thing happened. I'm like, what happened? He said, the fire alarm went off. I said, the fire alarm went off? He said, yeah, the fire alarm went off. I said, what time did the fire alarm went off? He said, around 7:30. I said, so what caused the fire alarm to go off? He said, I don't know. But I had to be at work at 8 and I overslept. So I jumped up. As soon as I yelled her name, the fire alarm went off. And I was like, okay. He said, so I jumped in the shower real quick. She was in the basement, so it was 3 levels. My son's at the top level. She was in the basement because I saw her office light was on. I yelled, Grandma, I'm leaving for work. I said, did she respond back? He said, no, she didn't respond back. I should have went and checked on her, shouldn't I? I said, no, you're good. You shouldn't have. And, God protected my son that he didn't go down there and check on her. So fast forward, I walk upstairs. I walk to the basement. All I can see is the light shining from her office when I walk into the basement, which is all my signs anyway of when things happen. and I cut down in the basement. And in my mom's office, you had to go around a corner. And I peeped in, but I didn't walk in. That was God's protection too on me. I peeped in, but I didn't walk in. And my mom was short. She was 5'1". So I didn't walk all the way in. I just peeped in. And when I came back around, I saw him. So I could see the gun in his left hand. I could see blood all over the floor where he, and I could see the bullet hole in his head where he killed himself. And the entire time I'm on the phone with my brother, who's cussing me by now that I need to go check on my mom because I'm hauling, my butt up out the house because I need to call the cops. And my brother's like, you got to go check on mom. And I'm like, I can't. I got to call the police. I can't go back down there. And he was begging me to go back and get my mom. But I said, I can't go get her. I got to go. And I hung up, and then next thing you know, it was within minutes, Stafford County was there. It felt like an eternity, but it was literally minutes. And, next thing you know, you see yellow tape around the house, and you're like, it's not a good sign. You don't see an ambulance, not a good sign. So my mother that day took 6 bullets in her left side. She didn't deserve it. We didn't deserve it. He killed himself, which made it easier for us from the, the legal standpoint. But, it's been a challenge, and I look and say, I teach teen driver safety for Stafford County Police. So, I would think I was the first suspect. I think, and I saw Law and Order. I refused to go to the police station. You're not going to keep me. And I name dropped, call Brian Jacobs, call Officer Peters. I'm like naming everyone who I've taught driver safety with, and they just questioned me in the car. But the first organization that reached out was Empowerhouse, and for help, for the family. And, at the time I said, I don't need any help yet. I got all these things. I'm a member of management. I got this. But I said, you'll hear from me later. And, I reached out about a year later. I was trying to get everything straight with my mom. And I reached out like right before COVID. And then COVID happened and the world kind of changed. And, I've been super involved in like the last 30 days. I work for a fantastic organization. I've been with Geico for almost 20 years. And they were giving money away. So they called it fast pitch. And you had to come up with a charity of choice, and pitch your charity for Geico to give their money to locally. And I had reached out, I'm a procrastinator. I wait till like the day it was due. I reached out to Kathy, and she called me right back, and we spent the afternoon talking and chatting and saying, how do I get this organization to help pay for this air conditioning unit? And that Saturday, she was telling me about, we also want to know, how do we get our associates involved? And she told me about the car wash. And I showed up and said, can I help? Can I help, take money out of people's pockets? I used to be a sales manager. I'm good at that. So this organization, I've watched how the impact it has on the community. When I was shooting the video, and of course we won. I didn't need to tell y'all that. If I was doing a video, we were going to win. I told them that from the beginning. I'm speaking this into existence. This will win. But, when I was doing the video, someone rang the doorbell. I was at the facility doing the video for, this grant. And the one person that knocked on that door was a Geico associate that used to report to me. And I keep telling them, these are all my whys. This is the reason why God says you got to do this. And I keep seeing my whys throughout, every single time. And, I can't, I can't say enough what I've seen Empowerhouse do with, and I said I'm going to reach out to him because I knew I was going to want to help. I knew what my cause and purpose was going to be. But I've watched it. I would hate for anyone to ever go through. And the crazy part is we try to take care of this ourselves. Because you know what? Domestic violence is one of those hush-hush things that you don't want to be but you need to scream about it. You need to scream about it. You got to scream about it. We try to protect our family because we don't want to tarnish our image. You got to scream about it. And, I looked through and, I've tried to change a couple things, throughout. This man had a rap sheet of 17 priors throughout Maryland and D.C. of violence, and he was still walking the streets. It's one of those things that I'm so grateful for this organization. And I found out about the organization through this. I've always given my money through United Way, but I've conned a lot of people. Not really conned. I've sold all my friends to move their money to the Empowerhouse way. But that's my story. And you gotta, when you know someone, I talked to the story throughout for all the Geico's associates with like 35,000 people. And how many people emailed me afterwards about what they're trying to fight inside their house. But you gotta get help. It's, I look and say, I don't live in the woulda, coulda, shouldas. I do believe God has a plan and there's a purpose and there's things that I have to do to make sure that I use this voice. I've learned the art of forgiveness. It's not my burden to carry what this guy did to my mother. I put it in God's hands to take care of everything that's meant to happen to him for what he did. But seek help. You don't have to do this alone. There's fantastic organizations within this region. I think I've had the privilege of meeting almost the entire team and some of the board members over the past few weeks. So thank you, and thank you.